Everyone. We take a few more minutes to let a few more people join us. I can see that people are still joining. So let's say in about 2 to 3 minutes we'll start.
מוזר לראות, כתוב פה אלון PC, ואז אמרתי, איך זה יכול להיות? אלון PC, תעשה את השם שלך, שלא תיצור בעיות, שלא ירגיש פיצול אישיות.
אם הייתי יודע איך משנים את זה, אולי הייתי פותח סטארט-אפ.
כן.
אלון, יש לך 3 נקודות ליד התמונה שלך, ושם תשנה את השם. תיגע בווידאו שלך, 3 נקודות. רואה?
rename. וואלה.
כן, כן, אני רואה. יפה.
כבר השתלם לך הלקצ'ר הזה, אלון. תראה מה זה, אתה יכול לעזוב אותנו.
יפה.
נו, זהו.
לא, עכשיו הפיתוי הוא לאיזה שם משנים, קים ג'ונג און, קים ג'ונג איל, או קים אל סונג. הבעיה היא שאם אני אשים שם צפון קוראני, הדרום קוראני ייכנסו ללחץ.
אז בוא נימנע ולא נכניס אף אחד ללחץ. אנחנו אנשי שלום.
אפשר להתחיל, אלון.
אני מסכים.
עינב, יאללה.
Let's go. So, hi, good evening, everyone, wherever you are. I mean, usually most of our audience is in Israel, but often we are having also audience from the East Coast in the US. So, wherever you are in the globe, welcome again to one of the lectures which is part of the webinar we are having as part of partnerships between few organizations, Natan for International Humanitarian Action, Forum Dvora, Peace Foundation, SEED, Society National Development, the International Program in Tel Aviv University for Emergency and Disaster Management, Olam, and the Israeli Agency for Development, working with the Ministry of Exterior and the Israeli School of Humanitarian Action. Today we are having, I think this is the 8th lecture given in this series. And today we are having Dr. Alon Levkowitz, which will share with you how South Korea is trying to win the war on the coronavirus. I would like to mention and to remind you that we are recording these lectures. You can find all these lectures throughout the social media, and of course, after this lecture will be finished, we will send over, and we are encouraging you to push it forward. I would like, before Alon is taking the floor, to give you a brief bio of Dr. Levkowitz, so bear with me. Dr. Alon Levkowitz is the chair of social science and civic department at Beitel College and the coordinator of the Asian Studies program at Bar Ilan University and a researcher at the Begin Sadat Center for Strategic Studies at Bar Ilan University. His research focuses on politics and foreign relations in East Asia, the Korean foreign and security policy, and Northeast Asian security. Alon, current projects focus on the North Korean military cooperation with Middle Eastern states, the economic and diplomatic relations between South Korea and the Middle East region, South Korea's African policy, and the North Korean missile industry. Alon has published articles in a number of academic journals, including International Relations of the Asia Pacific, the Korean Journal of Defense Analysis, Defense and Peace Economics, Middle East and Policy Studies, Military and Strategic Affairs, BSEA perspective papers, and chapters on Korean Peninsula foreign in several...
עינב, לא שומעים אותך, we cannot hear you very well, so maybe you can improve your location or sound.
Yeah, I move forward, but I will just moving forward to the microphone, but I finished to read the Alon bio.
So Alon will give a brief by himself.
It will be better. So Alon, please take the floor, and I hope I know you all have a really good time listening to Dr. Levkowitz. Alon, there you go.
Okay, check them on. Hi everyone.
וידאו, אם כולם יורידו את הוידאו, אז ישמעו יותר טוב.
Okay, you can turn on your cameras. Can you hear me? Okay. There are two, there's the Israeli style or the Korean style. A year ago, a Korean lecturer came to Israel, and I told him there's two versions of giving lectures in Israel. One is the Korean style that you talk and then people ask you at the end, or the Israeli style is that you talk and people ask questions all the time. So feel free, you can ask questions during my lecture because I got used to the Israeli style, or you can write questions in the chat, but I won't be able to look at them during the lecture. So feel free, just turn on the mic and ask, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. So let's first look at the figures. As May 3rd, which is yesterday, we have about 10,793 cases. Yesterday, 13 additional cases. No one died in the last day or two, recovered at about 10,000. And the important thing is the number of tests that Korea held since the crisis began, almost about 700,000 tests during this time. And the important is the curve. As you can see from April 3rd to May 3rd, the curve is not changing dramatically. There are at least 4 to 5 cases a day, and the number of deaths during the last week or so are 1 or 2, and in some cases even none. And it is showing a huge improvement in the Korean war against the corona. So what we will talk about, we'll ask few questions that the Koreans ask themselves. Some of it, they asked very quietly, so no one will hear. We will talk about time is money and potential crisis, corona crisis victims, and why time is important. Why should we identify the enemy, which is the corona crisis, and its paths? Testing and ingenuity will show that not just Israelis, but even Koreans have ingenuity. Trust and transparency in public support, which is very, very important. We are dealing with this crisis now in Israel because the public are saying, can we trust the government, or should we say the coronavirus ended and now we can have fun and going back to our regular life? And we will talk about the Big Brother and what are the implications of the Big Brother. In the case of Korea, they allow the Big Brother to see whatever they do, where they go, etc., etc. So, questions. The first question is, when did it start? What is the important date? Should we start? Did it start when it occurred in China or in Korea? Can we trust them? What I mean is them is the Chinese. And now it's a big debate between Republicans and Democrats. Can we trust the Chinese? Did the coronavirus started in a lab? Was it a Chinese conspiracy? And can we trust the reports that are coming from China? It is more complicated because China is the important economic trade of South Korea. And in some cases, you can trust them, but in some cases, you can't say publicly that you don't trust the reports that are coming from China. And in the case of South Korea, they had to work very diplomatically how to communicate with China. For example, they didn't block all the flights from China, only from specific places in China. Can we trust the WHO, the World Health Organization? For example, the World Health Organization says that there's no coronavirus in North Korea because the dear leader said there isn't any. So can we trust the reports that are coming from the WHO, and what should we do about this? And the big question is, can we handle the coronavirus crisis in a Chinese way? What I mean is, Korea is not like China that they can close an area, say no one can get in, no one can get out. We are a democratic state. No, the Koreans are a democratic state, and we have to follow the rules of a democracy, that we have to communicate with the public, and the public expect us to give reports, to answer to the questions that the public wants to know. And what's important is we have to allow the economy to work, not in full speed, but to allow the economy to continue to work as long as we can. Now, democracy, not like China, has its rules, different rules that the government should obey. And one should remember that Korea until 1987 was not a democracy. And this is why South Korea is very, it tries to prevent try to prevent it from becoming a non-democratic state. And this is why the rules of the game in Korea are very stiff. And that's why they try to pursue democracy in any way they can. So work fast, time is the enemy. Don't wait, act as fast as you can, and identify the source of the coronavirus and map it down. Now, the first case in South Korea was on January 3rd, 2020. This was a Korean that came from the area in China that the coronavirus started. But the biggest problem that we in Israel know about it is the Shincheonji Church, Shincheonji Church of Jesus Christ. They are about 10,000 believers. It is estimated that there are more than 10,000 people. The biggest problem was in the case of Israel that these believers came to visit Israel, and the Israeli public thought that they brought the coronavirus to Israel, but at the end we found out that none of the Koreans that arrived to Israel did not have coronavirus while being in Israel, but once they left Israel, they were infected in Korea. The biggest problem, and it was the worst nightmare from a Korean point of view, that this community was creating a gigantic coronavirus crisis. The government told the church that they need to get the names of all the church members. At the beginning, the church was not willing to give the names, but at the end, they understood that there is no, the state would not accept a no as an answer, and they gave the data to the government, and the government started to test all the members and to try to map who did they meet. From the Korean point of view, this was not just a national crisis, but it was a national image crisis, because Korea didn't want to be seen as if the coronavirus is coming from Korea and hurting other states, like in the case of Israel. And what you see on your right side is the church. On the left side is the head of the church apologizing to the Korean people for not doing enough to prevent the crisis from moving on. Now, the first task that the government started to do is to do mass testing. This means that at the beginning, they started to test at about 3,000 tests per day. And in a very short time, that they started to do 20,000 tests per day. This allowed them to have about almost 700,000 tests until now. The Korean have a phrase called pali pali, which is fast, very, very fast. They understood that doing as many tests as they can per day will allow them to find the source of the coronavirus, to map the virus, and then to prevent it from spreading all around Korea. Now, what they did is not just doing a regular test. They started to do drive-in or Mac drive test, that people can drive with the cars, do the test, and move on in their regular life, which was a wonderful idea. And Israel adopted this idea later on. Phone test as well. Now we have it in Israel as well, that you don't have to go to the hospital. You don't have to go. You can go in the street to a booth place. You get into a booth, or you stand outside of the booth, and there is a man in the phone booth, and do the test. Do it as fast as you can. In a few minutes, you can go home and wait to the results. They understood that they have to do it, as I said, pali. So 40 labs were working 24/7. In Israel, we had the problem that some of the labs were not working on Friday and Saturday. In Korea, the labs were working 7 days a week, 24/7, 40 labs working all the time in order to get results as fast and as they can. Now, the time is important. In the results at the beginning it took about 24 hours to get the results. In Israel, it's very sad. In some cases, 2 days, 4 days. I know in some cases, it's almost 14 days. Some of my students were waiting for about 2 weeks to get the results. And at the end, they found out that the tests were lost in the process. In Korea, they understand, for example, nowadays, when you land in Korea, you get tested once you land, and in few hours, you get the result, because they understand if you can pinpoint the patient, if he is sick or not, it allows you to map the people that he met with and to try to minimize the coronavirus crisis. Now, if you go to a hospital, if you need to be treated in a hospital, the government said all the cost of your treatment will be paid by the government. So, for example, if you go to, they gave a few examples of people that went to hospital. The treatment cost about $10,000. They paid nothing. The government said, if you're sick, we will pay for you. If you're not sick and you have to get a test, the test will be free, paid by the government. Ingenuity. One of the biggest problems that every state faced during the corona crisis is that you don't have, for example, kits. You don't have all the ingredients that you need to do the test. And what the Korean government said, that we will lift all the regulation, not all, but some of the regulation, to allow the Korean company to help the war against the coronavirus. And the president said, I'm giving a green light to all the companies to do their best as soon as possible. If you, what he said is that if you make mistake during the process, we will not punish you. What we want you to do is to help the Korean people to solve this crisis, because we need your help. And what happened is that on January 3rd, 2020 was the first case in Korea, and on February 4th, a coronavirus testing kit was developed by a Korean company, and they got a green light by the government to produce it as soon as possible. From a Korean point of view, they were not dependent on foreign sources to get testing kits. For example, Israel, the United States, other companies were looking around the world to get kits, testing kits, to try to map the coronavirus. In the case of Korea, they had a Korean company that was working 24/7 to produce the kits to allow the government to test as many as they can. And this allowed the government to do 20,000 tests per day, and to try to map it better than other states can do it. Now, another thing that is important is getting the trust and transparency. Trust of the people. Without the trust of the people, people would not follow up the Korean leadership. And as a democracy, they understand that trust is important. I'll give you just one example. Before the corona crisis, during the previous regime, there was the president, Park Geun-hye, that is now, she was sentenced to 24 years in jail. The public didn't trust her. The public thought that she's not telling the truth. The public thought that she's hiding things from them. And people were demonstrating. Every weekend, about 2 million people came to Seoul and demonstrated against the president, calling her to resign or to be impeached. Moon Jae-in, the current president, understands that without the trust of the people, he will not be able to handle this crisis. And this is one of the reasons why he said that he and his ministers will cut their salary in 30% for the next 6 months until the crisis will end. Here in Israel, no one heard about salary cuts, but this is a different political issue. There are, I think, New Zealand and Australia. I know in New Zealand they cut the salary for a few months, but other states did not show this way to show the people that we care about them. Now, public support was important, and the public were saying, if you are transparent, if we can trust you, we will follow the instructions that you give us. We were willing to allow the government to do whatever it needed to fight the war against the corona. Now, this is important because we talk about the big brother. The big brother is, the question is, can we allow the government to follow us? It is a very delicate issue in the case of Korea, because in the old days, during the dictatorship era, for example, Park Chung-hee, during the 60s, the 70s, Chun Duk-hwan, the president during 80 to 87, people in South Korea are very sensitive when the government tracks them, when the big brother is used to see whatever, if they bug them, whatever they do. But in the case of the coronavirus, the people in Korea understood that this is in the public interest to allow the system, the big brother, to follow whatever they do, and they allow the government and other system to track them. So Korea understood that they cannot close the border as other states did. For example, in the case of Israel, they didn't close the borders at the beginning. And for example, Incheon airport, flights landed not 100%, but let's say 30, 40%. There were flights from all around the world, except places, for example, specific places in China that the coronavirus was very problematic there. They started to close the borders and not to allow specific people. For example, nowadays, 90 states are not allowed to citizens from the United States are not allowed to come to Korea. They have to get a special permission to enter Korea, and even when they enter Korea, they have to go to 14 days of self-quarantine. So when you land in Korea, the fiasco that happened in Israel did not happen in Korea. When you enter in Korea, they screen you, they check your temperature, they monitor you, and for example, if you come to Korea, they'll give you a free taxi to your hotel or to the place that you will be self-quarantined, a taxi that is paid by the state, and it allows the state to be sure that you will go to a specific place and you will not go around. When you enter Korea, you have to download a coronavirus application to your phone. If you do not download it, you will not be able to enter Korea. The coronavirus application allows, you have to report twice a day, how do you feel? Plus, this application allows the state to track to see wherever you are. Another thing is that this application creates a big data of the big brother that allows to see, for example, if you move from one place to another place and you met someone who has a coronavirus, and everyone will be notified, and I'll tell you in a sec. Now, you landed in Korea, you have to self-quarantine yourself for 14 days, or if they find out that you didn't do it, the fine is $30,000 US. So no one wants to mess with the Korean government in this issue. As I said, get a free cab, go to the location of the quarantine place that you promise. If you don't have a quarantine, they will send you to a specific hotel. A day after you arrive to Korea, a health worker will visit you he or she will give you a kit of mask, thermometer, trash bag, and disinfection products. They will ask you, do you need anything? Do you need food? And the government will assist you. This, one would say, it's a wonderful social service that the government gives, but it's another way to be assured that you're safe, you're okay, and we can track you down. Now, the Big Brother follows not just your application. There's a phone tracking, there's a CCTV that sees everyone, and if you visit Korea, you'll see CCTV in every place, for example, in Seoul, in hotels, in corridors, in stores, and they will follow your credit card. Nowadays, most of them use the phone to pay for everything that they purchase. But nowadays, when someone is, the test says he has a coronavirus, the system will start to track his phone, track the CCTV and payment, and what you'll see is that people in Korea would get a message from the government in this street, and they will get a report. This guy, without his name, was in this mall at this time, let's say 2:45. At 2:46, he was using the escalator from the second floor to the third floor. At 2:48, he took off his mask. At 2:59, he did this and did that, and everyone can get the information, and no one says this is not a democracy. The Korean, as I said, the Korean people are willing to accept the Big Brother and to hug it and to allow the government to track them. Now, what was important is business almost as usual. Here in Israel, only 20%, 15% depends on the business were allowed to work. In Korea, they try to allow people to work. If you can't work at the office, work at home, business as much as they can, as usual, to allow the industry to move on, to expand the export. The government itself continue to function as much as it can. Another thing, the education system was on hold. They extended the holiday in Korea, but then they move on to online education, and the online education was working wonderful. Education in Korea, some would say it's not fun. It's a nightmare because you have to get to the best university. Culture and sports event, at the beginning, they allowed them, but then they put them on hold, hoping that in a week or so, some of the activities will be allowed to reopen. Seaports, cargo airports, especially the cargos, were working full speed ahead to allow the economy to flourish as much as they can. But we know that the figures, the economic figures in China will influence the economic figures in Korea. Now they're facing a big problem with the economy, and they're trying to find ways to assist some of the businesses in Korea. Now, coronavirus is a crisis, but it allows Korea to brand itself, not just the Hallyu, the K-pop, the K-drama, the Samsung Galaxy, whatever it is, but to brand the state as the state that we were able to win the Corona crisis. And what now the South Korean government is doing, they gave instructions to all the embassies around the world, brand Korea as the best model of war against the Corona crisis. They're publishing their assistance to sending testing kits to the US, sending testing kits and medical applications to Morocco, to Israel, and to other states. We did it, we won the war, and you should follow our protocol. We did it as a democratic state, not just as a Chinese state, lockdown or censorship style. We were transparent. We did it in a wonderful democratic way, and you should follow our model. And this is one of the pictures of the Korean Air flight that came to Israel, they brought testing kits, chemicals, and other apparatus, and the Koreans are now branding it around the world. Look, we are assisting everyone. We did it, and you should follow our model. Now, one more important thing before I end my lecture, and then you can ask, is that in Korea, this is from about 2 weeks ago, but if we look at the figures, we in Israel, we criticized the government, but if we look at about 2 weeks ago, if you look at Korea is marked as red, but if you look up beside it tests 2% of its population. So despite the fact that Korea tested more people, but Korea has about 51 million people, Israel tested more percentage of the population. Israel tested more than Korea. But at the end, if you compare Israel and Korea, you see that there are more death cases in Israel than in Korea, more patients in Israel than in Korea. But still, we hope that we will be able to overcome the coronavirus in Israel as well. So, toda, and feel free to ask whatever you want.
Thank you, Dr. Levkowitz. So now the floor is for you guys, asking Dr. Levkowitz questions about his brilliant, quite interesting lecture.
Thank you, Dr. Levkowitz. I think it was a wonderful presentation. I want to ask you, taking into consideration that Israel, in relation to Korea, actually tested a larger amount of the population and took much more extreme measures to try to fight the COVID-19. How is it that their model worked better?
Booyah, this is, I would say, give you the best answer is there. One should look at the politics, sociology of the Israeli society in comparison to, let's say, the Korean society. Wearing masks, for example, if you've been in Asia, you'll see that when you don't feel well, you wear a mask when you go to work. From an Israeli point of view, if you don't feel well, you send your kids to the kindergarten, or you go to work, even if you don't feel well. You don't care what might be the implication. I think that it worked well because the speed of the government was faster than the Israeli. They're able to pinpoint the sick people. They're able to treat them. Plus, if you compare the health system in Korea to the Israeli health system, one would think that the Korean health system is a third world country health system. The Korean health system is very good, and it allowed the Korean to fight the war in a better way than that in the case of Israel. Another thing is that's important. One of the things that the Korean understood, and I must say it's very sad, that one of the biggest crises one of the biggest crises in Israel, and if you look at the figures, and this is the most sad thing, most of the people that passed away in the corona crisis in Israel are elderly people living in elderly houses. In the case of Korea, they understood that this is one of the problems that they have to deal with. This is why when they tested the elderly people, because these people are in crisis, are the biggest crisis. So you can test them. If I listen, sorry for you. Well, I can't curse because it made me angry. But if I had to call 10 times to the health ministry to find out if one of my students, she's from Austria, where is her test? And they said at the beginning they told me stories, and after 2 weeks they said we don't know. We lost the test. Korea another difference is that in the case of Korea, they had the SARS and the MERS epidemics a few years ago. And the system that was ready to move on in case there's a new epidemic. In Israel, I'll take the fifth in the case of Israel, that it was like, sometimes it felt like there's a market negotiation system, that you give me this, I'll give you that. There's no coherent policy that, for example, if nowadays, if you look at the policies of South Korean ministries, they have plans. Next week, they'll do this. In 2 weeks, they will do that. In Israel, it feels like you hear the news at 8 o'clock, and then at 2 o'clock, they change the rules. So if they had a coherent program that will allow people to understand what's phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, people might obey the laws, but sorry to say, they didn't do it. Michal,
yes, Michal Beres.
Okay, I must say that yeah, it's very sad that and this pisses me off that you don't test doctors and nurses in a hospital, because only doctors and nurses that are working with the coronavirus patients. But what happened? You find out that they have coronavirus after you test them, and you have to work and check everyone. And sometimes if you check them on day 1, you have to check them a few days later to see if they have the coronavirus. But in Israel, they didn't do it, and it's very sad, including taking care of nurses and doctors, which they did the opposite in Korea.
I have a question, if I may, please. There are some experts who are thinking or assuming or forecasting that we will face another wave of the pandemic in the next winter. Are you, in Israel at least, are you familiar with any preparations taken regarding that in the Korean context? Whether they are, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm being an Israeli.
You're doing a good job.
Yeah. I've spoken to Koreans during the coronavirus, and people were in Israelis living in Korea. Some of them said that some of the Israelis that are living in Korea, the Israelis were telling them, don't go to Korea because it's not safe. Here it's more safer than in Korea. And the Korean was saying, the Israelis that live in Korea, we want to go back to Korea because in Korea it's safer. We trust the system. And I think that everyone understands that next winter there might be the flu, and there might be another version of the coronavirus. And the Koreans understand it, and the Koreans are ready. They have plans. They will invest budget, energy, and time to do it, to prepare themselves. The problem is, in the case of Israel, it's always politics. It's always, who's the Ministry of Health? Should we give him budget? Shouldn't we give him budget? Should we? What's the conclusion of this crisis? That if you don't give budget to the health system, they can survive. So there's no need to give an extra budget. The amount of money that was wasted in buying let's say, all the systems that are needed now, if the Israeli government would have bought it years ago, it would have saved us money. But now, some people, some businessmen were making millions of dollars by selling products that should have been bought years ago. And I must say, and I'm very sad to say that I trust more the Koreans than the Israeli government, that they will do a good job. Now, there was a question by Smadar about the data that they gather. I'll tell you a story. A Korean friend of mine, about 2 years ago, the government said that if you want to know if the MI5, the Korean security agency, the Shabak, is bugging you, you can ask the government. You can fill the form and ask the government to tell you if they bug your phone or your computer. And a colleague of mine that thought that the government is spying on him went to this office, filled the form, and after 3 weeks, he called them to ask them, do you have an answer? He said, yes, we have, but we can't tell you on the phone. You have to come to our office. And then they told him, we don't spy on you. And it was very sad because he thought that he's an important dissident and the government is following him. So I asked him, do you trust your government? And he said, I don't. So can you trust the government that doesn't use, will not use the data? And to answer your Smadar question, the data that was collected during this crisis is not relevant to the next crisis. The government has enough data to analyze it, but they don't need, the data would not be relevant because, for example, the data that they gather nowadays is who did you meet with? For example, nowadays when you come to Korea on a regular day, if there's no crisis, you get to your cellular phone a message, an SMS saying there's an earthquake in another province. Tomorrow it's going to be very sunny. Wear a hat, drink water. It's going to be very cold. Wear some warm clothes. They will use some of the data and they will renew the data. Everyone understands that if it's not the government, it's the private companies that are making billions of dollars on the data that they gather. We have Facebook, Google that are gathering data freely, and we allow them to do it. But Korea is ready for the next crisis in the winter. I don't recommend going to Korea in winter because it's very cold, but Israel is the promised land, so be here.
Thank you. Any further questions? No, not for now. So if no one else has a question, I would like to thank you again, Dr. Levkowitz, for the really interesting lecture. It's always interesting to see how it's being cultural issues and diplomatic issues and different approaches are changing and being implemented differently in different contexts.
Enough.
Yes, Ken.
Maybe,
Dan, go ahead. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, sorry. I mean, my microphone was mute. Can I ask? Maybe you can a little bit elaborate. You said that the issue of relation with China. Can you say something about how that will affect the future relation between Korea and China? Do you see any major effect on the relation between Korea and China, taking into consideration what happened with the coronavirus?
As a good Israeli, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
Why did the Prime Minister did not decide to stop all flights from the US?
Okay.
The answer is because it might affect the relation between the United States and Israel, or in the case Israel with the United States. South Korea is in a difficult position because on the one hand, its biggest business trader is China. Second one is the United States. the United States has about 30,000 US forces in Korea. And sometimes it creates a clash between what Beijing wants and what Washington wants, especially during the trade war between China and Beijing. Korea understand that it's like what one would say its diplomatic toolkit is very limited. It depends on the Chinese economy. It wants to trade with China. It understands that China is an important player in the region. This is why Korea tries to shift its policy in order not to hurt or to insult China. Sometimes it costs her a lot. For example, about 3 years ago, Korea decided to allow the United States to deploy anti-missile defense, U.S. anti-missile defense in South Korea, while China said, we don't like it. And China boycotted Korea, and it cost them about $1 billion each month. So what Korea does is trying to play a very delicate game with Beijing. This is why, for example, they did not allow Chinese from areas that the coronavirus was very problematic in those areas, while allowing other Chinese to enter Korea. And there was a big debate in Korea. People were saying, for example, students were saying, don't allow Chinese students to come to Korea because they bring the coronavirus to Korea. But the government said, we have to allow to continue the relations with China. Korea understands its limits, despite the fact that they're 51 millions and they're an important economy, but they understand that they cannot hurt or insult China, and they have to do maneuvers to fight the coronavirus and to move on.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. So, sorry again, Dan, for didn't hear you earlier. Again, any other question? Okay. So now I hope I covered you all. Thank you again, Dr. Levkowitz. Then again, we will this lecture is recorded, and we will send it through the organizations who are partnering in this initiative, starting of tomorrow. Sorry, someone wants to add something?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you. And currently, we still don't know when we will have the next lecture, but we will keep you posted. Follow the publications.
Enough. We will have. It's a good opportunity to invite you. We are doing in cooperation with Seed Washington next week on the 13th a webinar about the role of the media in the COVID-19 era. And we will have journalists from Senegal, from Rwanda, from Channel 12 in Israel, and from the state. We've distributed the invitation today, and we will keep distributing it in the next few days. And Dr. Buri Adini will moderate this panel, so you are all welcome. The 13th of May, 6 o'clock Israel time, and I think it will be 11 a.m. East Coast time.
Thank you, Alon, and please follow C publications. Sivan, yes, we will send you over the recorded link.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a pleasant evening.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. It was very interesting. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Bye-bye. Done?
Ken, Alon, Alon was
Ken.
Alon.
כן.
אתה שאלת אותי אם אני חניתאי לו, זה אבא שלי מחניתה היה.
כן, אני יודע, כן. אשתי חניתה. ינאית ברקן, אבא של יואל ושמחה ברקן, אז...
אוקיי, על הכיפאק. בסדר, 100%. טוב.
אתה צריך לשאול אותי מה קורה עם סין? אתה הרי יודע יותר טוב מה ש...
לא, אבל תראה, אני לא עוקב ממש צמוד על העניין, אבל אני חושב שאנחנו צריכים ללמוד מהקוריאנים, אנחנו באותו מצב דרך אגב, לנו יש בעיה מאוד גדולה, אוקיי? ולכן אני חושב שהסינים, כלומר, הקוריאנים הולכים להיות, תראה, הם כבר אכלו מהסינים, סמסונג כבר לגמרי אאוט מסין, אוקיי? כלומר, הם כבר בזמן זרקו אותם משם. השאלה היא באמת כמה יהיה, בסוף, שוב, כמה יהיה לחץ אמריקאי יש על הקוריאה, כדי בעצם, יש לחץ מאוד גדול.
כן, הקוריאנים הם בין הפטיש לסדן במקרה של סין וארצות הברית. הם היו מעדיפים להיות מהאום ולצאת מהקלחת הזו, אבל הם כל הזמן מוטרדים מההשלכות של המחיר שמשלמים במתח בין סין לבין ארצות הברית. והנשיא הנוכחי, מון ג'אין, נגיד, כל הזמן מנסה לומר לסינים, אנחנו לא שלהם, תעזבו אותנו, אנחנו עצמאים, אבל איזה עצמאים, הם מקבלים הכל משני הצדדים. זה
ברור, וכמובן שהם גם, אל תשכח, יש גם את הבעיה של הקוריאנים היפנים, שגם הם לא בדיוק החברים הכי טובים, וכלומר, יש בקיצור, אני לא מקנא בהם, אבל זה בסדר, זה בסדר.
להם יש בעיות יותר גדולות, לא נורא, אבל זה אכן מדהים שהתפיסה, כשאני מדבר עם אנשים, עדיין, זו התפיסה שאנחנו כלכלה ראשונה וקוריאה היא כלכלה עולם שלישית. אני פוגש עדיין באקדמיה שחושבים ככה, ואז אני אומר להם, אין בעיה, תיסעו לקוריאה, תחזרו, נדבר. הם חוזרים ואומרים, אנחנו מתנצלים, לא...
אבל אתה אמרת משהו, אני לא קלטתי, אבל סך הכל שירותי הרפואה בקוריאה מאוד... אני זוכר את הביקור שביקרתי יחד עם פרס, זה היה, גם היה שם נודלמן, שהיה מההסתדרות הרפואית, הוא מאוד התרשם משירותי הרפואה בקוריאה.
אני אמרתי ששירותי הרפואה, תשמע, יש לי קולגה שהם היו צריכים לעשות השתלת כבד מהצומח, ומה שהם הופתעו, זאת אומרת, אמרו להם בארץ, באיכילוב, שהם לא יכולים לנתח אותם בגלל כל מיני בעיות. ואז אמרו להם, יש שני מרכזים חשובים שאתם יכולים לנתח, או בפריז או בסיאול, בבית חולים אסן. והם היו בחשש מאוד גדול, כי קוריאה, מה זה קוריאה? זה לא איכילוב, זה לא קלאסה. ואז אמרתי, תשמעו חברים, נתתי להם את מה שאפשר להגיד על הפערים התרבותיים, והם הגיעו לשם, והיו המומים, זאת אומרת, היו המומים, התפיסה הייתה, ובאחד הטיסות שלי לקוריאה, בשנה שעברה, ישבו לידי זוג הורים שהאבא רחמנא ליצלן רק רופא שיניים, האמא טיפול נמרץ ילדים, הבן הזה ככה, הבן הזה ככה, רק האבא הוא נכשל, הגיע לרפואת שיניים, שהבן שלהם עושה תת התמחות בקוריאה, והוא אומר, הפערים הם אדירים. זאת אומרת, הוא אומר, אני מרגיש שאני בעולם שלישי, ולמרות זאת, זה...
טוב, תגיד לי, אתה יודע מה יקרה עם הטיסות? כי זה לא יהיה כל כך מהר, אני מצטער לעצמי. וגם אני מבין שאנחנו עכשיו לא יכולים לבקר בקוריאה, נכון? כלומר, יש לנו...
אמרו, חבר'ה, החשבון מוגש לכם, אבל לא רק אתם, אלא 90 מדינות. כדי להגיע לקוריאה, אתה צריך לקבל ויזה. וגם אם כשאתה מגיע לקוריאה, אתה צריך להיכנס 14 יום self-quarantine. אז מה הערכה היא, תשמע, הציע לי מישהו הצעה פשוטה, זה שעולה נגיד למטוס, נגיד בנתב"ג, יש לך בדיקת קורונה, התוצאה צריכה להיות תוך כמה שעות, לא כמו בארץ, כמה ימים, וכשאתה תנחת בקוריאה, יעשו לך גם בשדה התעופה, ואז יש לך כמעט 12 שעות הפרש, אם פעמיים אין לך קורונה, אז יאללה, תרגיש מחופשי וזה. הבעיה היא שפה עדיין אין מערכת בריאות שיכולה לבדוק, מעבדות שיכולות לבדוק את זה כל כך מהר, שזה לא יאומן, אבל ייקח, תשמע, הבעיה היא מי יטוס, אנשים פוחדים לטוס עכשיו בגלל...
לא, זה ברור, אבל אני מנסה, אבל הסיבות זה שיש בדיקות שתוך 12 שעות יש תוצאות, זה דעתי באמת מדהים, כלומר, מבחינה הזאת זה שאנחנו לא מסוגלים להגיע לזה, זה פשוט לא יאומן, זה פשוט...
זה פוליטיקה. לדוגמה, למה מד"א עושה בדיקות ולא...
טוב, זה ברור שזה הפוליטיקה וכל הסיפור. לא, בסדר. לא, שמע, אני אומר, אני בהחלט חושב שקוריאה זה מודל מדהים, כלומר, בשבילנו בטח, ויש לנו כל כך חוסר הבנה וידיעה על מה שקורה שם, שאין ספק כן, אבל זה אחת המדינות שוב, אני חושב שיש לנו הרבה מה לעשות איתם ומה לשתף פעולה איתם, וכן,
אני מקווה שאולי ברגע שיאשרו סופית את הסכם הסחר, אולי זה ייתן איזה בוסט נוסף ליחסים.
הסכם הסחר הוא ישנו, גמרנו, זה הכל עניין טכני, באמת, כלומר, אין פה שום בעיה, ביבי רצה לעשות מזה סיפור, ואחרי זה בדקה 90 הוא לא הגיע, כי פתאום הוא שם לב שאולי ירדו עליו עם הסיפור הזה של השטחים. עזוב, זה פשוט היה מגוחך כל הסיפור הזה, אבל ההסכם כן, ההסכם כבר זה רק עניין טכני של מה שהם קוראים עריכה משפטית של העניין, לנו זה מאוד מאוד חשוב. לא, אני חושב שבהחלט יש לנו פה עניין לקדם את העניין. טוב, יופי, בסדר גמור. יאללה, תודה. ביי.
בבקשה, ביי.